right. We're back. Hey, if you have an opportunity to and you'd like to chat with us, we have a new call-in line, and that'll allow you to jump on with us live here. Love to hear from you and take your calls. The telephone number is 573-453-5505. That's 573-453-5505. We're going to be talking in this segment here about the idea of the IRS, who has just come out and made a statement that they're going to block employers from dumping employees into the healthcare exchanges. And the reason why they're going to do that is because they don't dare allow America to see exactly what's going on here. See, we already saw 7 million people get kicked by their employers, and now they're concerned that as the elections come up in November, there would be literally tens of millions kicked off. In fact, we know what the estimates were. The estimates were coming in saying anywhere between 40 and 70 million Americans were going to find themselves kicked off their employer health program. Well, in order to save their butts, the Democrats couldn't possibly let that happen just before the election because they'd be roundly trounced. And so the PR monsters and manipulators are at work, and they're out there trying to manipulate you and propagandize you. The IRS is the arm that's doing that, and they're going to bar employers from dumping the workers into healthcare exchanges. Now, this is off the New York Times, and so one, you got to read it with a grain of salt, but two, you also have to recognize that even some of these mainstream Ministry of Propaganda rags and programs that are out there are starting to get the message that the guy they've been backing and the guy they've been supporting is actually not defendable. I mean, even they have to recognize that at some point in time, what he's doing is not defensible from the perspective of national benefit, national security. So let's understand what this argument says, or this article says. Excuse me. Many employers thought they could shift healthcare costs for their employees to the government by sending their employees to a health insurance exchange with a tax-free contribution of cash to help pay the premiums. But yesterday, the Obama administration squelched the idea in a brand new ruling. Here we go again with the Banana Republic dictatorship nonsense, right? Soon as they find out that there's a hole in the dike, they just run over there and they plug it. Now, the problem is that they have no authority to do that. They have no legislative authority to do that. They cannot make law, and everybody knows it. Why America, and Congress in particular, and the media are sitting there and allowing this administration to operate in such a lawless manner and not hold them accountable for it and inform America so that Americans could stand up and stop it is beyond my comprehension. But that's exactly what they're doing. They squelched the idea in a new ruling, and they're saying that these arrangements would not satisfy the health care law. There's no health care law. There's basically, let me tell you what the health care law is. It's a set of rules that are made up by people as they're going along. That's exactly what they are. There's a set of rules that they're making up as they go along, and they're manipulating these rules to cover any incident that comes up that may threaten their claim to power. See, the truth of the matter is, folks, this is a 2,000-page bill when it was passed, and it's now a 25,000-page list of rules. Unlike our Constitution, which was written on 4 pages in its original concept. You know why? You know why the Constitution was so small? Because it was meant to have a small federal government. It was meant to say, this entity that we're creating is only supposed to have a very, very, very limited scope. And what we're dealing with right now is treason. Treason because these people and the government itself has taken an oath to preserve and protect the Constitution. And it has done everything in its power to subvert that truth, to subvert that Constitution, and to enslave you. The employers, wait until you hear what the penalty is, up to $36,500 a year for every employee they dump into the individual marketplace. Now, if you recall, the original claim was that they were going to be able to get away with a $2,000 fine per employee. And so the average employer looked at that and said, okay, so we can pay $5,000 or $6,000 or $8,000 or whatever it's going to cost us to provide health insurance for these people. Or we can pay a $2,000 penalty and wash our hands of the whole mess. Then we just step back and do what we have to do. We take the $2,000 per employee, and we consider that a cost of doing business. And we're going to get a tax write-off for it anyway, so it doesn't really matter. That's what the argument was then. What's the argument going to be now? You see, this administration is burning the candle at both ends. Because on one hand, they're relying upon employers to maintain a health marketplace that's been in place for generations. On the second hand, they are trouncing them publicly, saying, they're greedy and, they're the problem and they're throwing big business under the bus. They can't have it both ways. They trounce Wall Street, but then they go right over to Wall Street right after they've just thrown them under the bus publicly, and they get down on their hands and knees and they lick their boots and beg them for money. Billions upon billions of it. Do you know that there's about $4 billion a year spent in lobbying? For what, 535 people in Congress? 535 pieces of human excrement divvy up almost $4 billion a year. Think about that. Look how cheap they sold you out. Look how cheap they've sold you out. I mean, the 30 pieces of silver Judas Iscariot got 2,000 years ago was worth more. This ruling by the IRS, who just has they have no constitutional authority to exist. It's an agency that was created out of the whole cloth of a lie by the federal government. Remember, just because they make a law doesn't make it legal. I mean, it was legal to own slaves. It was legal for them to bar you and prohibit you from drinking alcohol. Doesn't make it so. Just means that those who consider themselves and those of us who believe and allow ourselves to be fooled into thinking that they're the final arbiters of the law have got you buffaloed. That's what it means. It means that you have been foolish enough to believe that which they tell you. You've been foolish enough to believe the lies, the propaganda, the manipulation that they feed you every single day. The truth is, the IRS has no authority to tax you at 30, 40, 50, 60% of your income. None whatsoever. But you allow it. If America ever wants to get free of this tyranny, it's very simple, folks. You just opt out. A national strike. Not violent. Just say, I'm done. Hands off. I'm finished. I'm going to go sit on the couch. I'm not going to pay any taxes. I'm not going to show up for work. I'm not going to buy anything. We're in a holding period until this ends. See, that's what it would take. Not a march on Washington. Because, I get it. The problem is that the march on Washington, while you're handing them your money, does no good. It can't just be a march on Washington. They ignore you anyway. They're laughing at you. They're not interested in hearing your protest. That's why they created free speech zones, for crimini's sake. You think they care? If they cared, they wouldn't have the unmitigated gall, the hubris to create something called a free speech zone. But you can sit there and protest all you want. All you're doing is playing right into their game, right into their hands. If you really want to change this, the right way to change this is for America to say uniformly, under a united front, gay, straight, black, white, brown, I don't care what color you are, yellow, orange, pink with polka dots. I don't care whether you're a Republican or a Democrat. I don't care whether you're on welfare or you're wealthy. I don't care what any of the arguments are that you're given. I don't care what any of the dividers are that you've been taught. The only solution to this problem is a unified, elbows locked response. We are on strike. You can pass any law you want, we're ignoring them. You can try to spend money, but you're not going to tax us anymore. We're not going to work, so you can't get the work out of our employer, the tax money out of our employer. In fact, you can't get the tax money from the employer who's going to pay a tariff to ship something out or ship something in. You can't pay sales tax, or you can't collect sales tax because we're not going to buy anything. And when we don't buy anything and we don't go to work, the employer isn't selling anything either. Nothing's going to ship. There'll be no gas taxes to collect. That's it. We're on strike, and we're going to starve the beast to death. You being the beast, of course. And we're going to look you right in the eye and tell you exactly what our intent is. To starve you to death. Do we need a federal government? Absolutely we do. But we need one that's so small that a magnifying glass isn't sufficient. We need a microscope to find the federal government in your day in and day out life. That's what your 6-page Constitution called for. That's what your founders told you should be the case. And they knew this tyranny was going to run rampant because they understood human nature. They knew. They understood. They warned us. And they gave us the tools to turn it around when it did go south. They gave us the tools. They gave us the Article 5, which says when Congress becomes your betrayer, you can go around Congress. And if all else fails, you can take the country back by force if necessary. We're not there yet, but we certainly have an obligation to at least use every tool in that toolbox before we give up on the job. I get it. The tools are not perfect. It's the wrong size wrench. It's a screwdriver that's not quite the right size. It's a hammer when you really don't need a hammer. But by the same token, folks, just because it's the wrong tool doesn't mean we can't be creative and ingenious about how we use that tool, or use those tools to fashion another tool that will do the job adequately. And in this case, we've got the solution right in front of us. And that is simply to make a new tool using the tools in our kit bag. You know what that new tool is? A massive nationwide strike. A strike. A strike that says, we're done. We're finished. We're not going to forward in any taxes. We're not going to sit here and pay sales tax. We're not going to pay gasoline taxes. We're not going to buy anything, so you won't get any sales tax. We're not going to show up at work, so our employers cannot mail in the employee taxes. We're not going to pay Social Security tax. We're just on strike. That's it. We're all going to sit down, and we're not going to move. How long do you think it would take, America? 30 days? 60? I got to tell you, what you don't realize is that as uncomfortable as that 30 or 60 days would be, as difficult as it might be to get through, I mean, I agree, and I grant you that it would not be an easy period in time. Yes, you may take the risk of, God forbid, having to go without air conditioning for a couple of weeks. You may have to go with the risk of not having a refrigerator for a week. Maybe 3, maybe 6, maybe 10. But I got to tell you, it's going to be a far better off scenario than what's going to come if we don't take control of this country again. If you think things are bad now, or you think things are going to be bad under a strike scenario, wait until these guys realize there's no alternative and there's no more hiding behind the Ministry of Propaganda and the nonsense. And that the world is going to expose the $17 trillion debt plus the $125 trillion debt that we owe for unfunded mandates, plus the $200 trillion debt in derivatives and government-backed guarantees to the corporate pigs. And I got to tell you something, folks. You're gonna wish you'd taken that 60-day vacation then. The truth is, that what we're looking at here is fingers in the dike, and it's a crumbling dam, and they know it. That's why they are coming out here, and Obama says, I don't think an employer-based system is going to be or should be replaced anytime soon. He's a liar. If he thought he could replace it without somebody or the nation rising up, he would. He knows he can't get away with it. You see, they move it along at a pace that's glacial. And they've been at this, folks, for 100 years. 100 years. Plus, more than 100. They can sit here and redefine things all they want. They can go out there and give themselves all this power. But it's only theirs until we say we've had enough. I'm not advocating that everybody grab a rifle and race for your capital. That's not what I'm saying. I am saying that when you hear and you've seen the results of what's happened in the past and what has actually changed policies, procedures, what has reined in government, you already know the answer. You're just unwilling to do it. You don't have the courage to do it. You just don't have the courage. You wouldn't be able to keep a nationwide strike, even if it was only the 20 million patriots in the country. Don't forget that out of the 20 million people who would join that strike, that's half the workforce, because the other half is out of work completely. And they're sitting home while you're out there working hard all day, and they're sitting there in the air conditioning thinking how nice this is. You're afraid you're going to lose something. What you don't realize is it's already lost. You've already lost it, America. The only thing left for you to do at this point is to either go regain it or write it off as permanently lost. And that choice is yours. If you care at all about the remainder of your time, forget your kids, forget your grandchildren. Be selfish for a moment. What you think you are about to lose by saying we're going to go on a nationwide strike, but we might lose our car, we might have our house foreclosed on because we don't pay the bill. I got to tell you, you've already lost all that anyway. It's not yours in the first place. You owe it all in debt, And if this thing ever comes down, and it's not a question now of if, it's a question of when, then what are you going to do? Going to go to the bank then and say I'm on strike? They're going to say it doesn't really matter that you're on strike. Nobody's working. This is a depression that's worse than the one we had in the 20s. You have a chance to resolve this peacefully, if only you'll take it. The question is, do you have the courage of your convictions to stand up and do what you know to be right? Do you have the courage of your convictions to bring this thing to a close versus letting them bring it to a close, well planned? See, they're going to execute a plan. The question is whether or not you're going to get caught in it or you're going to derail it. All right, we're going to take a break. When we come back, we're going to talk about how the White House has outed their own CIA head in Afghanistan and how Karzai has literally blown off the president. The president went to Afghanistan on Memorial Day for a photo op under the alleged, excuse that he was going to go over there to support the troops, who he obviously couldn't really care at all about. And while he was there, they were trying to set up a meeting between him and Karzai. Now, of course, the joke of that is that, they're trying to say, well, it was a conflict of schedules. There was this problem in scheduling, you see. Well, let me tell you something. If you buy the scheduling conflict routine, you would be naive, to put it nicely. At this level, trust me that there is no such thing as a president who makes an unannounced visit and gets rebuffed for not having called ahead, okay? Think about it for a moment. You can look at this in the right light. Karzai has dissed the most powerful man in the world, and it exemplifies the attitude of the entire planet, whether they look upon him or look upon all of us as a nation. That piece of human trash over there, that corrupt monster, didn't diss the President of the United States. He dissed all of us. Pretty shameful. All right, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we'll address that. If you'd like to give us a call, you can right after the break. The telephone number for you to call into is 573-453-5505. Write that down. It's 573-453-5505. Make sure that you have an opportunity to get over to AmericanResumeService.com. That's American Resume Service. They have graciously agreed to help support America's Voice Now by offering their $200 resume package to anyone from America's Voice Now as a listener here for $100. And then they're going to donate the whole $100 to America's Voice Now. If you're in need of a resume because you're trying to either find a job or maybe improve on the one you have, then you can get to AmericanResumeService.com. You can also call them at 417-264-2486. That's 417-264-2486. You can also catch them on email at info@AmericanResumeService.com. By the way, they specialize in military resumes. So if you have if you've got military experience, or you're freshly coming out of the military, or just home recently, this is a perfect opportunity for you to. They've got 20,000 people employed in from clientele over the last 25 years. So they got to be doing something right. All right, make sure that you visit our friends over at batterystation.com and also our friends over at Pizza Hut. Pizza Hut is a great nationwide chain of restaurants, but the Pizza Hut here in West Plains is the number one place in the nation, and I'll tell you why. The manager of that particular restaurant has come to us and said, normally we don't do things out of the nationwide chain thing, but I want to support this program. And so he has essentially done that, and he supports this radio program by directly advertising with us, and I can't say enough good things about them for that. If If you have an opportunity to, on Tuesdays and Thursdays, you have reduced lunches, and on Tuesday night, kids under 12 eat free. It's family night. Take advantage of it. Visit our friends over at batterystation.com, or you can call them at 417-257-7799. Visit our friends at atlassurvivalshelters.com, the best shelters in the nation. We'll be back in just a minute. You're listening to America's Voice Now.